But most people are unwilling to grind for that many days in a row, that many years in a row before seeing results.
Welcome to The Bottom Line, the podcast that brings you real stories behind real restaurants. In each episode, we explore the decisions, systems, and stories behind the most successful restaurants out there in the market. No fluff, no hype. Just real operators, real challenges, and real advice from people who know how to get results. Let's get to the bottom line.
Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining me in the Bottom Line podcast. I have with me a very accomplished restaurateur, Fred Castellucci. Thank you for joining me, Fred. I've been looking forward to speaking with you.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Your hospitality group owns and operates 6 different concepts, 2 on their way. They are in Atlanta and Nashville, one of which has a Michelin award. Congratulations to you. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment.
Thank you very much.
So you started 15, 16 years ago, a few years after college. You graduated from Cornell. I mean, they must have done something right in the school to set you up in this amazing path.
Yeah, I had a great experience at the hospitality program there. Met a lot of like-minded people, learned just as much about what I might want to do as what I didn't want to do.
That's awesome. And so you acquired a second-generation restaurant, is what I understand, and then turned it into the Iberian Pig.
Yes, that was actually my second project. My first project was taking over a failed location of my family's restaurant, of which there were a couple locations. One was a franchise, one was family-owned. And back then, we had a couple franchisees that were operating these restaurants, and they all went out of business around the time I graduated college. So my first project was actually taking over one of these failed restaurants, reopening it. I got a $10,000 loan from a customer on a handshake, and that's how I opened the first restaurant. And then Iberian Pig was my first original concept that I started back in 2009.
And you didn't stop in one original concept, which is amazing looking concept. If I may share it with the audience over here, the Iberian Pig, an amazing concept. Three locations, 2 in Georgia, 1 in Nashville, and this
yes,
is
and we actually
looking...
have Charlotte on the way. So we just signed our lease in Charlotte, so we'll be opening our 4th location next year in Charlotte.
Congratulations. And
So with this particular concept, I had very little startup capital. So the first restaurant was a failure, and then reopened it, really struggled to gain traction, eventually did gain some traction and was able to turn the business around, make it break even, and then ultimately make a little bit of money. But I didn't have a lot of capital, and I didn't have any investors. Nobody was willing to back me at that point in time. And so I really was looking for a second generation space, one that I could fix up and, turn into a new original concept, of which Iberian Pig was. But the biggest challenge back in those days, 2009, was figuring out how to get the space open for $100,000 budget. So that was all the money I had. And actually $20,000 of that money I gave to a contractor who did some demo work, stole the money, and left town.
Oh, geez.
I had to figure out what to do. So essentially I became the general contractor, hired all the subs, worked on barter arrangements with subcontractors in order to build the restaurant out and pay for it over time and pay for it in gift certificates. And so ultimately, what was $80,000, I leveraged into about $250,000 in order to open it, which even back in 2009, that was not a very large sum of money. And so when we got to kind of opening night, we got our CO on a Friday, and I had run out of money. All my bank accounts were overdrawn, negative 10,000. I had 20 grand worth of inventory in the restaurant, plus alcohol inventory, unpaid for, which is actually illegal in the state of Georgia. You have to pay COD when the driver shows up. And so I told all the delivery drivers that I had the check, but I lost it, and then I was going to give it for when the delivery driver showed up or when the rep showed up. And so we kind of were in a do or die moment. And so that Friday night, I told my chef, I was like, we have to open the doors. Like, we have no other option. We're already running out of money. We're already out of money, but by Monday, all the checks are bouncing. So we've got to do something here. So we opened and we served 200 guests on our opening night, and it was a
How did you?
total
How?
disaster. It was a disaster. We had no idea anybody knew we were opening. And so when we opened and we saw 200 people, we just totally crashed. No one knew what they were doing because we hadn't really trained anybody, especially
And
on the kitchen side.
how did 200 people show up?
So this was early social media days. So this was before Facebook even had business pages. This was only individuals were on Facebook at this time, 2009, very early days of social media. But we created a Twitter account and we created a Facebook account as if the Iberian Pig was an actual person. So, and then we started friending people in the neighborhood and doing like cheeky stuff. And so we were early adopters of that medium, and it certainly was incredibly successul in getting the word out.
On one hand, you are creating the concept, being the general contractor,
And general manager.
doing all this, and also marketing guy. I mean, how all these like things that you were able to build. You must have an incredible conviction of your success, pushing it all the way when everything is stacked against you. How did you push through? How did you convince yourself? How did you keep going at that time? Because it's so easy to look at now, super success, tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of employees, Michelin star.
Yeah, well, I mean, I watched my mom and dad do it growing up. Like the level of perseverance that I saw in my parents was what gave me the ability to do that. I saw it growing up, and I think I watched my dad build a very successful business and then see it all disintegrate and fail, and then move his family down south after losing everything in the Northeast. And I watched him restart over and over again. And then when we had our very first family restaurant, I watched, my mom as the general manager go in every single day, open up, put a smile on her face, no matter how bad things had gotten, no matter how many checks we were bouncing or employee issues we had or running out of money or couldn't pay the landlord, couldn't pay the power bill. I watched that growing up and I just saw that perseverance, and I knew that, failure is one of those things that it's way further down the line than most people think. Most people think as soon as their restaurant starts losing money, or as soon as they can't pay a bill, or as soon as there is a challenge of some kind, that they got to shut the doors. But the reality of it is you can go on for a long, long period of time in that subsistence level of failure and losing money. And what ultimately breaks people is that it's that they can't continue to do it every single day. They can't wake up, work a 16-hour day, and then wake up the next day and have less money in their bank account than they did the day before. That is a demoralizing thing. And most people are unable to break through that. So they go through a number of days in a row of that, a month, a week, a year, and they can't keep doing it. They don't have the ability and the fortitude to break through. And what happens is like ultimately, if you're doing the right things and you have the focus on the fundamentals of the business, you will break through. But most people are unwilling to grind for that many days in a row, that many years in a row before seeing results. And I think that's ultimately what it is.
So I was talking to this restaurateur in Chicago. He had a similar startup story, and like he loses money, and then with like the last funds that he has, like he hires a publicist and he gets on the TV. And the huge, lines out of the door and stuff like that. I think that there is like doing the right thing in the most unlikely of the situation is what, in my opinion, like separates. Like you opened up on that Friday, yeah, and you're basically many restaurants wouldn't have thought about social media or something like that. So you open up 200 people. You must have told the story very right, which then tells me you understand what the guests are looking for, right? which then tells me that you probably designed the space and the menu on what the guests actually like. So first day of opening, that Friday, 200 people show up. You weren't expecting. You probably didn't bring in the people. There wasn't a sophisticated training beforehand, right? Explosion. Then what happened?
And then it was just about getting better every day. Like, it was so bad the first shift, like total disaster. Most of the people didn't get what they ordered. And if they even got fed, I'm not sure. But I do know that we had some funds come in that we were able to use to go the next day, woke up early in the morning and bought pots and pans and spatulas and tongs and all the things that we actually needed to cook, because we were still using all the stuff that was there from the restaurant that had just failed. So we barely had enough to even cook the food that we were serving. And so, I mean, we just every single day woke up and tried to make it better than the day before. And we took that same ethos and mission statement that it now is the mission statement of the whole company, which is passionately pursuing the perfect dining experience, one guest at a time. And we took that energy and that ethos to every single guest. And, you know, my goal when I was the general manager of the restaurant, and my goal for all of our GMs and managers, is to make individual connections with our guests, individual relationships that can build over time, over many visits. And so that really is ultimately the special sauce of the company is how do we develop those individual relationships with our guests and also with our team members.
Amazing. And you created 6 different concepts, 2 more concepts on its way. Why didn't you pursue the path of like going with like Iberian Pig, 10 of them, and then sell it to a private equity?
Well, I think one of the things about the restaurant business that gets me so excited and what keeps me coming back is just how challenging it is. It just tests all of your faculties, and it tests so many areas of your abilities, your left brain, your right brain. And for me, as someone that really gets excited about the creative process in the restaurant business, I love trying to bring these brands to life and create something new and something that will meaningfully impact the community or the neighborhood that we're deciding to put this restaurant in. So that's what gets me really excited. Every restaurant that we open, there's got to be some element of challenge and something new that we're doing. And that being said, a lot of people are really successful taking one concept and duplicating it over and over again. I think there is just as much risk in doing that as it is doing something over and over again. Now, once a model works and it is successful, certainly if you can duplicate it and it's successful over and over and over again, that is way less risky than creating a new concept. However, when you look at brands over the course of long periods of time, what happens? Most brands fade. Most brands fail over a very long period of time. It takes a lot of energy, focus, attention to detail, and also care in making sure that that brand doesn't lose relevance over time. And so the easiest way to destroy a brand and destroy a high quality brand is by over expansion very quickly. Not only is it execution can suffer when you expand quickly,
That's right.
which is most likely what happens, but also oversaturation of the brand no longer makes it highly desired. And so when a brand no longer becomes highly desired, it's challenging to charge a price that is anything commensurate or above what your competitors are charging. And so then you get into this game of price. And that's the last place you want to be as a brand. So the brand, ultimately, what is a brand at the end of the day? You're attaching some amount of style and ethos to a product. And so the only thing that allows you to charge more for that product than the next guy is that brand. And so if you're not taking that brand and making sure that you're curating it over time and cultivating it and making sure that it doesn't lose that like shine, that's ultimately what we're trying to do. And so that's why I waited 10 years before I did the second location. Ultimately, when we did the second location, it was really successful, more successful than the first. When we did the third location, it was more successful than any of the locations before that. And so that's something that we have done over a very long period of time, 15 plus years now. And now we're opening the next one in Charlotte in a new market. And hopefully we can do something similar in that regard.
How did you determine each one of these concepts? What would work? Where it would work? What was the process?
I think when I've been successful and also unsuccessful too, when I've been most successful is when I've had a passion to bring a specific idea to life in a specific neighborhood or I have this specific idea and I'm looking to find the right neighborhood that would support it or the right city that would support that. And so when I've been unsuccessful is when I've tried to product market fit my way into a restaurant concept where it's like, okay, this location is available in this neighborhood. This is a great location. What would work here? What's not already here? Like, to me, that is the worst way to go about creating a new brand. And so when I'm thinking about creating something new, it's really about that. It's like, how do we bring an idea to life that I'm really passionate about? Or something like, for instance, duplicating Iberian Pig. I was really passionate about bringing it to life in a new place, in a new market, in a new city, or in a new location that was first generation space where we could build it from scratch, where it wasn't exactly like the restaurant that had been there before. And we were trying to do something with a space that had already been designed once. And so that's kind of how I approach it when we're most successful. When we're not successful, it's when we're trying to figure out a way to make something work in a space. And that typically has not been great for us.
Could you please talk to the audience about all of the brands?
Yeah, certainly. So I'll go in chronological order. So Iberian Pig, just discussed. Sugo was the restaurant that I took over in Johns Creek in the suburbs of Atlanta back in 2007, right out of college. And so that's the location that I previously mentioned. That was a failed franchisee that we reopened and ultimately turned around and turned into a successful business with my parents. And then Iberian Pig came after that, which is our modern Spanish tapas restaurant. And then in 2011, Double Zero came after that, which is our upscale Neapolitan pizza and handmade pasta restaurant that's located in Emory Village in Atlanta. And then after that was Cooks and Soldiers, which is our Basque Asador restaurant. So this is a restaurant built around the cuisine of the Basque Country and specifically the wood fire grills and that kind of seafood and meat centric culture. And that restaurant was opened in 2014. It was the first time we really received critical success in addition to financial success. And so that was really a big turning point for us. It's also the first restaurant that I built from scratch, the first restaurant that I got a real loan on. And my brother had graduated from culinary school and worked in Spain at 3 Michelin-starred Arzac and came home and we created that concept together. And that restaurant was a big hit off the gate and ultimately led to some nice accolades. James Beard nomination twice, also Eater Restaurant of the Year back in 2015 and Atlanta Magazine, Best New Restaurants, Top 50. We saw a great, outpouring of support for the opening of that restaurant. And now we're 11 years in, which is amazing. So pretty incredible journey with that restaurant. And then after that, 2 restaurants that you don't see here. So one of which was a failure, which was Bar Mercado. And that was kind of what I talked about in that, product market fit, kind of trying to figure out a concept that would work somewhere. And so I got excited about a location, but it didn't work. And it didn't work because the idea wasn't something that I really had a passion around bringing to life. And
it wasn't organic.
No. And then we had a second concept there that actually did work, which was Recess, which is a fast casual healthy concept. But what I realized is that the skill set that it takes in order to be really good at the high-end restaurants is completely opposite for the fast casual. And so what I did was I brought in a partner who's been very successful in running that business. And so it's not part of our parent company. It's part of a separate company. But we still maintain ownership and we still have a partnership there. But that was another thing that I learned, which was, really focus on the things that you're good at. And if you're not good at something, find somebody else who can, or bring in partners or sell it off or figure out a way that you're not having to do it anymore. Because if it's not something that you're good at, you're unlikely to become good at it. Focus on the things that you're already good at, So that's what happened with those 2 concepts. And then 2019, we opened our first duplication. So our second location of Iberian Pig, as I mentioned before, which was really successful. Then the pandemic hit, obviously changed everything, which also gave me an opportunity to follow another passion, which was my passion for sushi at the highest level. And so I had gone to Japan and eaten in some of these places in New York and elsewhere. And so I had a friend who I had met at a sushi counter in New York City that we developed a relationship, and he was a chef. And then when things shut down in New York, we had been planning a pop-up. So the pop-up was scheduled for April 2020, and we had already bought all the equipment and started doing the marketing and really focusing on what this pop-up would look like, because I thought it'd be something interesting for Atlanta. And really, I just wanted to think about what if there was a demand for it here. Well, obviously the whole world changed, but he was willing to come down anyway, launch it as a takeout pop-up, and we just saw tremendous demand and excitement for the takeout pop-up, and ultimately signed a lease within 2 months after that, started building out, and then ultimately opened in 2022, very beginning of 2022. So the restaurant is 3 years old now, and it's been a crazy ride. It's just within 24 hours of releasing reservations, they all filled for 3 months in our opening night, and so it was pretty wild, and has been very successful ever since, and ultimately got a Michelin star and the inaugural Michelin Guide in 2023, and then again in 2024. So we've been very fortunate.
Amazing. But you said about the grit, the creativity, and your passion to create, bring something to life. Could you talk to us a bit about the moments that you were most excited about, like in your journey? You wake up and you are super energetic, super excited. There is some kind of butterflies in your stomach. There is some scary, somewhat of some concerns, but butterflies in a positive way. Positive thoughts, positive. What are those moments for you?
I say there have been a few true highlights. There are two moments I can point to. One was after years of struggle, opening Iberian Pig, and it was one of our first absolutely busy, amazing Saturday nights. We had worked out the kinks. The restaurant was running smoothly. It was packed. The lighting was just right. The music was just right. I was walking down the stairs. I could see all the people in the restaurant. It's like a sea of people. And I just knew at that moment that I had made it. I knew that my major financial troubles were behind me. And that was such an incredible relief and such an incredible sense of pride and joy in that moment in the early days. And I'll just never forget that. I remember the song that was playing. You remember those moments in your life. And I think the second moment was after the pandemic. I had this great fear of losing everything because I watched my dad do it 3 times growing up. And so I'm always fearful that that's right around the corner for us. And so when the pandemic came, that fear was basically coming true. And so after navigating the pandemic and the challenges and the things that we went through, and none of our restaurants closed, and making through that period of time and keeping our team together and the management, and then opening a new restaurant early in the pandemic with Mujo, and how challenging that was and how much it stressed the team and everybody involved. And it was such a new, challenging concept for everyone on our team. And then the culture that it takes to execute at that level is very challenging. And then all of the other noise around it and some of the supply chain issues and just getting it open. It was just such a hard project. And then being there for friends and family and working that shift and seeing the quality and the execution and how good it was and how good I knew it was already. And then to see the reservations start pouring in as we're working. And within an hour, within 2 hours, we've sold out almost 3 months worth of reservations. Those two moments in my career, I will never forget. Just where I was, how I felt, what the environment was. Those are the moments.
That's amazing. You love that feeling. And in every concept opening basically brings you back to that early Iberian Pig days and living that for me, that would be the Beverly Hills opening. There was one day in 2019. This is a different day that the celebrity chef that I was working with, he was in Miami. That feeling of it's nonstop, and every day you have to achieve so many things to it. The project moves forward. It's super exciting.
Perfect dining experience, one guest at a time.
Perfect dining experience. How did you ensure that each one of these concepts, they are a huge success right after opening? how did you maintain those standards?
I think that's one of the biggest challenges in every business. I think part of that is you have to have this kind of operating system of these are our values, this is our mission, these are our goals, and being able to tie those things back to the everyday processes of the business, which is the hiring, the training, the enculturating, goal setting, rewarding, all of those processes, which kind of like generally go under HR, but I think are the lifeblood of the business. And so we have to set our goals, we have to set our values, then we have to build all those processes such that they support those goals and values. And then we have to also go in and check on the execution day in and day out, and then also have measurement systems in place to know if we're doing a good job or not. And so those, I think, are the most important things. Very, very challenging to do, much easier said than done.
What kind of measurement systems have you put in?
Well, I think the most important measurement system that we put in place started over a decade ago, and that was simple bonuses for our managers for hitting targets. We give them the goals, and then they hit them, and then every quarter they get paid out within 30 days of the end of the quarter. And so to me, I think bonuses should be concrete. They should know what they're trying to hit, and they should be paid out quickly. And so that you can create that incentive system for managers. I think that was number one. And then number two was finding and refining our metric around the guest satisfaction and guest score. And so we do that by pulling in only verified sources of reviews. So we do that with our reservation platform, OpenTable or Resi, and we do that with our mobile payments platform, Sunday. And so we're getting as much review traffic as we possibly can, so then we can kind of build a profile of whether or not we're succeeding on a daily basis.
So when somebody leaves a review, like they say, like Mujo, fish was no different from, this and that. And like, that the fish is like is coming from super special sources. Like, what do you think about that review?
So we don't take really any account for the individual reviews. So all we care about is the aggregate. I care about what's the score over 200 reviews. Like, I want to see what the aggregate is on the whole business. One person can have an opinion. That doesn't mean it's accurate. But if 200 people have that opinion, now we start to have some accuracy around it. So that's how we manage. We manage to the entire business. So we know one person can be wrong, but are 200 people wrong? Are 200 people in a week wrong? Like, that's the real answer.
Not possible. Yeah. That's the real answer. And do you use a system to track and manage, or your team uses a system?
We use the reservation platform and we use Sunday. That's it. We take the information from those two platforms.
Awesome. If you had a time machine and a cool red jacket like Michael J. Fox, and go back in time 10 years ago, what would be a few recommendations, advice that you would have to yourself?
For me, I've been thinking about this over many years now. Anytime I come to a crossroads or an important decision or something that I'm really stressed about, maybe it's a relationship or it's an employee or a landlord or a deal or a restaurant or any number of things that are causing me stress or a challenge at that given moment. I think about this idea of like the 5-year rule, which is if you look back from today, 5 years from now, will I even remember that this was a challenge or this was a decision I was worked up about? And the answer is 99% of your daily struggles or challenges, 5 years from now, you won't even remember that they happened. Like, there won't be a single memory of this issue. Now, for that 1 out of 100, that actually is a big deal, that you say 5 years from now, that was a turning point. That could have gone the other way. And if it went the other way, I'd be in a much different position. Those are the ones you really need to focus on. So know which decisions are really important. And I think that when you think about those decisions, it's the concept of the one-way door, the two-way door. Once I make this decision, can I come back? Can I backtrack it and try something else? Or is it only one way? As soon as I make this decision, I'm through this door and there's no way to go back. And so I think about decisions like that all the time.
No, thank you for this. That's an amazing answer. Knowing what in the moment people, lose that big picture. But if you spend some time thinking about this, people can make that decision. That's very good advice. After you open so many locations, so many different concepts, you realize that now we need to manage this holistically. And the first person that you hired is a marketing person. What followed? How did you develop the oversight, the team that basically, how did you develop the team that helps you? Are they still do you still have people from the original Iberian Pig? How did you build that team?
Well, the first person was my sister. So she joined the company right out of college. She took over as the general manager of Pseudo, which is what allowed me to be the GM of Iberian Pig when we first opened. And so ultimately, in the very beginning, it was just about family members who were general managers. And then after that, I hired my best friend, who was my first non-family member general manager. And then after that, I hired my brother, who was truly our first executive chef.
Yeah, Spain. Yeah.
And so I started really tight. And then as we started growing, adding in those support features that you need from a corporate oversight perspective in order to grow. So it started with marketing because there were a lot of people we were outsourcing to at the time. It was just adding costs and not very efficient and not very fast. And they weren't working at the speed that I wanted. And so that was one thing. Then came accounting. We were losing a lot of money because we weren't tracking the money very well. And so accounting was next. And we hired Mika, who's still to this day run that department ever since. Then we hired project management, somebody to help me open new restaurants because of all the details and minutia that is required to do that. Then we hired a director of operations, somebody to help oversee the operations of all the businesses. Then my sister went into HR and she took over the HR position. So we kind of had built the processes over time as we've grown.
What's next? What excites you? You will open 2 more concepts, 3 more restaurants. What excites you?
Well, so we've got 2 new concepts that we're developing in Atlanta, which I'm super excited about, in Buckhead. Both of these concepts are with our Michelin-starred sushi chef, who's going to be joining me in this new project. And we just hired another sushi chef from New York City, also a Michelin-starred chef, to help out with Mujo as he transitions into the new project. And so he and I are working on 2 new projects that we're super excited about. One is an omakase tasting menu restaurant, and the other is a small, intimate 40-seat restaurant as well. So we're very excited about bringing those 2 new things to life. And then I'm also excited about bringing Iberian Pig to a new market. And so bringing Iberian Pig to Charlotte is something that we're very excited about.
That's awesome. Fred, is there anything you would like to add?
No, I think we covered it.
This is an awesome story. I think people will learn a lot from your story and your perseverance. Right? This all started, if you think about that Friday, right? You basically persevered through this, created something super special, and then maintained. Any one of these would break different entrepreneurs is my point. Like, number one, taking over the family's restaurants, then the Iberian Pig's initial opening on bootstrap cash and being bootstrapped, the first opening and that 200 people showing up, but the opening isn't going as well as it should. Then stabilizing and becoming a super hot brand, and then keeping on the consistency and opening new concepts and managing them. COVID was a bad time especially for the fine dining. So, but you kept it all together, kept the team together and grew, created Mujo in that time. So I think I'm looking at this podcast from both a restaurant operator and also entrepreneur standpoint. I think you add a lot of value on both of those aspects, and you're an inspiration.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Fred, for joining me today in the Bottom Line.
Thank you. Have a great day. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to The Bottom Line. If you found value in today's conversation, make sure you follow, share, and leave a review. Have a question or need a professional's opinion? Then be sure you reach out using the links in the show notes below. New episodes come out every other week, and until then, we will see you next time.